At this point, I believe we can just move on to our speaker panel. And let me just pull up the names. And we will begin with Elder Tom Snow.
Ambastits Tanse Eklenete Adnin Bojo. Hello. These are the greetings in the language of the signatories to Treaty 6, Nakota, Cree, or Niheo, Dende, and Soto, I think, which is Anishinaabe. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of City Council and staff, and my fellow members of the Edmonton Framework Committee. Tom Snow is my registered name. My actual name is Tatangagan, which loose translation is like buffalo, like a buffalo or elusive buffalo or something like that. I'm a Nakota Sioux from Morley, Alberta, west of Calgary, and I'm a member of the Nakota Sioux living along the eastern slopes of the Rockies and in this area. The term Wahiki Chichobi, I'm going to talk about that. It is my responsibility here, and so I'll just talk about it with some, with a story and then a little bit of an explanation. And Wahiki Chichobi translated means kinship. It is a medicine. It is one of our primary foundations of our spiritual, social, political, and relationship structures. So as a story, when I was being registered for the residential school, there was an argument between my sister and my father as to what my full name was. The reason for this was that up to that point in my life, I was known in my kinship term. I was son, other son, nephew, younger brother in male or female, and older brother, male or female term, cousin, other father, and uncle. By that age, I was also referred to in other endearment terms as well. This starts while the baby is still in the womb. Shortly after birth, a personal song is made and with kinship term by your mother or close relation that makes you associate with this person in a loving relationship. When a person sings that song as a baby, it brings you joy, and you start dancing or wiggling or jumping depending on your age. My name was rarely spoken, and when it was spoken, it was usually in a third person with more distant relatives. What this did was it included me together with all my extended family and the community, and there was an automatic inclusion to the family and community instantly. From this came acceptance, belonging, love, nurturing, a responsibility, and a position in the community. It is a way of drawing people close to each other, to get used to each other. Spiritually, it teaches you how to show respect for everything. It creates a peaceful pecking order per se. It unites people in a sense of camaraderie. When you address somebody by name, you have actually distanced them. It is a way of being kind and courteous to each other. It is to induce positive relationships. What this does is it creates allyship. This is what I think is what we're after in Wahiki Chichobi, the Edmonton Framework endeavor. This would set a structure for us to move forward for a better understanding of each other. With this in mind, we need to learn our true history as Indigenous peoples and settlers and come to terms with all that has happened. It is a way to move forward like an extended family system where we practice inclusion, understanding, human rights and justice, etc. Thanks for listening. I am honored to be here. I'm also humbled to be part of this process. I'm grateful that this is happening. Thank you. Have a great day.
Hi, thank you. We will now move on to Elder Joanne Saddleback. You have 5 minutes.
Wachie, Joanne Saddleback, Ogisago Esquel, Netsigasun. I want to tell you that we are very happy to be with you this morning. We've been working on the Indigenous framework, trying to contribute as much as we can for not months now or weeks now, but it's been years now that we've been working with the city of Edmonton. And I want to mention especially Jamie Miller. She is sincere, hardworking, and I doubt if we could have gotten to this place if it weren't for her hard work and that of Emily Skinner. I also wanted to especially mention Chrissy Hodgins and Emily Riddle at the Edmonton Public Library. They are my co-workers, and they helped to make the Indigenous space there happen. I also wanted to talk about when last week I was doing an interview with the Alberta Art Gallery, and the artist that I was in a discussion with online, he's non-Indigenous, but he was doing an artwork about the territory of Treaty 6, delving into the past of it and looking some of the history. And he asked me a question. He said, how do we build that trust? What is it in that kinship relationship? How do we build that? Especially when we're first meeting each other. And it goes with your first principle of listening. And it was, I trust the protocol you give. So many people, they don't understand what culture is. Culture is not a product. It is a process. And when you're listening, that means that one of us is talking. And there's a protocol that's involved. I mean, I know that we have a different definition of what protocol is. But for us, protocol is when you are offering that tobacco, when you are offering those gifts that open those doors wide. And what protocol does, it's not about the elder that you're listening to. It's about you. What are you prepared to give as protocol? Because that protocol is medicine. It opens up your mind and your heart so vast that when an elder is speaking, you can not only conceptualize what that elder is saying, you can believe what that elder is saying. So it opens you up and you begin to understand that perspective that we're talking about. You begin to accept, and that's what our old people talk about. What do they want from governments? They want acknowledgement and they want respect. That's what they want. So in this, what Jamie refers to as we have to be feeding the fire on a constant basis. And she's talking about that protocol. And I know for me, when I was thinking about what is it that solidifies this partnership between the city and the community. And I've been hearing for the past 20 years that the city was going to give over some land. It was Fox Farms at first, and that elders were going to be sort of in trust of it. Then I heard that there was this cultural center, sort of all-encompassing cultural center. And I don't know where those things are at. But that's something huge that feeds that fire for a long time, that allows us that place. The one thing that Indigenous people in urban centers need so much is that place to access, to practice their culture, to access elders, to be able to be part of that listening principle. That's what we talked about as well when we were working with your managers, when we've been working with the Indigenous Affairs Office, that this building of listening, it's not only about reconciliation, but it's also about the truth. And the truth is going to take a long time to come out, because the more comfortable we feel with you, the more we're going to talk about that truth that exists. And then the more we begin to trust you, the more you can trust us, that we are telling you the truth, that we are serious about this partnership. Because in that kinship, we understand that we immediately are already related. Our old people call non-Indigenous people cousins, that you are our cousins. So we are immediately related to one another. All we have to do is get to know each other a little bit more. So when you're thinking more about possibly that center, that cultural center, we don't think of it, our old people, we don't think about it as an organization running it. We see it as a community running something like this. Sorry?
I said, Nishigos, thank you. Hi. Your time is up. And in continuing my trend of pretending that we don't all know each other, we'll now move to Elder Jerry Saddleback.
Thank you very much. As far as this, we're talking in terms, our old people often tell us that you have to sometimes announce the source, where you're getting your source of information from, due to the very nature of orality or oral tradition. With us, with the Plains Cree people, which I'm from the Plains Cree, there's two main societies within the Plains Cree society. There's one society within that called the Uitamagoso Society. Uitamagoso Society are the ones that believe that spiritual beings come in and talk to them, either through their dark lodges, your black lodges, your shaking tents, and different lodges that they have. But the belief is that the spirits come and tell them these things. And then there's another society they call Aanskats Ogunungo Tsimuneok. Those are the carriers of the intergenerational carriers of that long story, as what we term today as the history of creation story. Now, this is the area that I've been born into, that history of creation story. I was raised in that society, so whenever I speak, I'll be talking in terms from that society. It's how they've maintained, in spite of all of these things we talk about, and colonization, what have you, that we, due to the stable systems of the many stable systems of oral tradition, we were able to maintain it up to this. Mind you, it dwindled in number, but we maintained this oral tradition and what it is today, how it stands today. So it's with that, I'd like to say to you that I'm really grateful to work with you, all of you, in the understanding when they say, of working together with us. It's one of the things there is in the treaty itself, when the smoking of that pipe, it's in peace. And when they smoked that pipe, it was in peaceful coexistence together, to live in peace and in coexistence together. That's how they smoked that pipe. And the very essence of that meaning, the old people talk about some of the principles behind it. One of the principles behind it, of course, is the principle of reciprocity, of how, you maintain the distinctive beauty nature of your nation, but at the same time you're agreeing to have a reciprocal arrangement from nation to nation in a very equal setting, equal nation to nation, equal to each other, not one nation over the other nation kind of thing. So, but that's part of our society, our societal philosophy that stemmed prior to the treaty itself. Being a nomadic people, we had a statesman of it within each circular autonomous encampment that was able to make journeys throughout this island of North Central and South America, one island. And so we were also created right here at the belief system that we have from our history of creation story, from this island. And so it's from that, the old people, they tell us that when we traveled, as when our statesmen and the people within the circular encampment traveled, some of the things they've seen in establishing the single principle of peace that existed. One single principle was, hey, the Creator made everything perfect. Let's leave it as is. And as a nomadic nation, we've seen it firsthand by seeing all the tribes, the nations of people, they're absolute one with nature and their ecosystems. So that's what we are, we believed in. So that's part of our, when we say getting along with people from nation to nation. Those are some of the things that hit me, like the pre-treaty concept of how we associated with each other and during the time of the treaty, and then now today that we're struggling with that, to come to grips with the actual nation-to-nation understanding of what that meant back in 1876 and prior to that. So with that, I just wanted to say I appreciate you listening to me in that manner. And one of the main concerns, of course, is the language with ours. We're always wanting to find systems in place how we can. That's one of our stabilizers as far as our oral tradition. That if we could get, not buy our language back from you, but maintain our language and to have the assistance to be able to do that and help. Thank you. I really appreciate your lending me your ears today, and have a good day. God bless you, all of you, each and every one of you.
Hi. Thank you. I've lent my ears so much that they're starting to not work, but I'll get by. All right. We will now go to Elder Heather Platras.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the Creator for another day. I want to thank and acknowledge all the elders that have been part of this process, even from many years ago. A lot of our elders that have passed away. Getting emotional because one of them included my late father, Homer Patra. And seeing the place that needed to be more welcoming for Indigenous people, seeing the importance of having a home for the homeless people, and inclusion for the youth. My dad was always about the youth. Our youth today are being left behind. They need to feel that they're part of something. They need to have access to education, and it's not traditional education they need. Part of those commitments to having access to the culture. When I first started my career with the federal government, it's going to be 27 years now. And I guess that's why they're calling me an elder. I'm just old. The reality is, when I first started there wasn't much in the way of a representation for Indigenous people. And as a young person, that hurt me because growing up with culture with both the First Nation and Métis, I'm really blessed, and I acknowledge that. So I spoke from the heart. I would get dreams and visions, and I would go to the elders and ask for guidance and help. So I was very fortunate to help set up a cultural center in Canada Place. And from there, that developed a lot of relationships with all levels of government. And it was the city that came to me and asked me for help with National Aboriginal Day. At one point, I helped organize events at the legislature grounds for 8 years on top of my other jobs. And it's just a commitment I have for my people to make sure we have a place, to make sure we're represented in a good way with culture. So having those sacred sites where our people can go have ceremony is so important, just like Elder Joanne talked about. And to have this concept of 5 minutes when our elders are speaking, that's right there is not listening. That's disrespect. These elders are needed to be heard. That's where our knowledge is. Our youth need to be involved. That's where our future is. That concept of having more Indigenous employees hired. I work on national campaigns within the federal government on so many issues I'm asked to be part of. And each time I pray to the Creator, give me guidance to say what I need to say, to help me, to make a difference for my people. Those teachings we have of how I walk, how I talk, how I think, and how I treat others, all the while speaking my truth. Reconciliation is more about learning the truth first, the true history of Canada. That's so important. I provided awareness to your communication staff in the past. I'm more than willing to help with whatever, and that's part of why I'm here today, is that this relationship that I created on my own, with my own efforts, providing awareness, providing connections to community, Many groups come and use our ceremonial room to have pipe ceremony because there's nowhere else they can have it in the city. And we're at this time and place where we have all this talk, all these things, all these agreements, all these papers that say they're going to improve things. Well, let's do it now. There should be 5 sacred sites in the city in all the directions so that elders can go there and have pipe. That's what needs to be done. Our connection to the land, our relationship to those ceremonies. People live in fear. Change is hard. But look at today where we're at with technology. Our youth should be given that opportunity to learn this technology. They can help us with these meetings. Your own structures, your own laws, your own meeting here today is evident that you don't even know those rules of passing minutes of what's supposed to be done next. So having more structure, even being how you are with your own orders, will be able to walk the talk together. These rules are man-made, and we can change them. We're here today to do that, to let you know as Indigenous people, this is the time. And I speak like this to ministers, to deputy ministers, to ADMs, you name it. When I'm asked to give my opinion or to share what I think, that's what I do. And I learned that from my parents and the ancestry I have from my dad's side, from Big Bear. My own grandfather was one of the first counselors for Sawridge. So being a leader, a natural leader, I don't take it for granted. Given the gift of voice, I don't take it for granted. My truest intention in our prayers is for the next 7 generations. I look at my granddaughter, who was a gift given to us after my own son was murdered. She has brought love and light to my home. And I just think about what she's going to go through, the racism, the hardships, the difficulties in school, in programs, even at post-secondary levels, to have to endure that. I don't want to have to go through that with my granddaughter, that hurt and pain, that disgust of how people can be so cruel, so mean. My beautiful daughter's being harassed, just trying to walk down the street. The assumption that our women are nothing, worthless. And yet our teachings are from the matriarch, from the woman, from the female power. That balance has to be given back to the females if we really want to truly make change. So I want to acknowledge my spirit name, Standing White Buffalo Girl, and that when I'm asked to be part of things or if I'm encouraged to speak, sometimes I wonder, why me? But again, I just pray on it. So I acknowledge all the community members that are on this call, the elders, all the people that I know personally, that together our voice will help make change. And I've been part of it for a long time. And, Creator willing, I'll be here for a long time because I want it to be a better place for our people. When it's a better place for our people, it'll make it better for all citizens, all Canadians, all humans, because we're all part of that circle, that all of us have a place. All of us have gifts. All of us have things we can contribute. So again, my offer there as one person in the work that I do, whatever I can do to help, I'm here and I will do all that I can. And again, I give thanks to the Creator and for all that's being done to this point. It's exciting and I look forward to what we can do together. Aye, hi.
Hey, thank you. Well said. We'll now move to Donita Large.
Donita Large Nasigasan. I am the First Nations Métis Inuit grad coach for the Braided Journeys program at Archbishop O'Leary High School for the Edmonton Catholic School District. I'm honored to speak on behalf of our program and students today. When the Indigenous framework began, Braided Journeys leadership students from across the city were invited to join the initiative to represent the more than 500 Indigenous high school students enrolled in our program. Braided Journeys has had the benefit of engaging the City of Edmonton representatives for a number of projects, including Indigenous youth internships, which provided placements in various city departments, and student-facilitated blanket exercise for city staff. As a part of the development for the Indigenous framework, Braided Journeys youth participated in the pipe ceremony, a youth and elder gathering in Rundle Park, provided note-taking for an elder session, and attended a virtual framework youth engagement session. The Indigenous framework has demonstrated a city that cares about the opinions, perspectives, and voices of our Indigenous youth. During the engagement sessions, students shared their experience accessing city services such as transportation, recreational facilities, libraries, and interacting with city staff. The youth felt empowered to participate in the positive experiences provided by the Indigenous framework sessions. During these experiences, the youth shared heartfelt stories of what it is like for them to be young Indigenous Edmontonians. They talked about frightening experiences while using public transportation. They talked about close encounters with danger while walking home from work at night. They talked about the shame and anger they felt when they were targeted for carding, and they talked about being feared just for walking together in a group. The youth shared some of the inner dialogue and fears that challenged their sense of identity and confidence to navigate all that the city has to offer. The students were honored to have the opportunity to provide their voices to the framework as they shared about their desire to educate others on their perspective. As future leaders, they saw their input as helping to create solutions to future problems and create more understanding of their lived experience. The students have felt that it is important to continue to create opportunities for our Indigenous youth. The youth identify that it has helped them gain professional skills and independence, has helped them feel at ease in spaces where they would have otherwise felt unwelcome. The students also really felt it was important to continue the youth and elder engagement work, as many of our youth lack access to elders in an urban environment. I would like to share some of the thoughts on moving forward with the framework's foundation of how city employees can best support and build positive, respectful relationships with Indigenous people. Our students have been educated during a time when Canadians have been learning about reconciliation. When the students have experienced is a City of Edmonton staff who have been willing to learn and be in relationship with Indigenous people. Yet we know that the work has only begun with segments of the staff. In education, in Indigenous PD, the phrase preaching to the converted sometimes comes to mind. Much like a relationship that is broken, the first step of healing is honesty, when space is created for the truth to be spoken from both sides. The second step is to make amends for a broken relationship, which is being called reconciliation. But in relationships, we have to be willing to fix what is broken if we want it to change. Otherwise, we continue just doing what we have always done. The work started with the Indigenous framework is the beginning of the difficult work of making change if the relationship is authentic. This relationship is complex as there are many players. Specific to city staff, what does this look like when city staff are at different places and they're learning about Indigenous people? Some staff may still be at a point of, why is this important? They still haven't experienced truth and the benefits of reconciliation work. For those who have, they realize that they have to unlearn what they thought they knew about us as Indigenous people and relearn our collective history with a different lens. With last year's global experience of the BLM movement, Canadians felt the wave of unease of the Black, Indigenous, people of color anti-racism education became suddenly an acute need for addressing systemic racism. Are city staff ready to tackle the hard work of anti-racism education and the issues that make Indigenous youth and all Indigenous people unsafe within our city? The youth are ready. Hi.
Tapui, hi. Thank you. We will now move to Julia Babiak.
Mr. Chair, we've been informed that Julia won't be speaking today.
Fair enough. We will now go to Donna Niebusch. There you are.
Good morning. Good morning, elders. My name is Donna Kniebusch, and I've been working with the City of Edmonton for 14 years. I have worked on a number of Indigenous priorities over the years, such as creating Edmonton's Indigenous Employees Resource Network, known as EARN, and the Indigenous Awareness Training, with over 8,000 employees trained. I am also a representative for Employee Services on the Corporate Steering Committee. I'm very passionate about my work, and many of you here today know that about me. I have been asked to speak from this very unique position, and sometimes that means conflict for me because I live in two worlds. First, I'm a First Nations woman living in the City of Edmonton. Second, I'm an Indigenous employee of the City of Edmonton. I will share with you from this unique perspective that I have seen a lot, I have heard a lot, and I have personally experienced a lot. There are so many Indigenous people that are in this very same position. And because of my close working relationships with Indigenous staff, I am aware of some of the struggles of our Indigenous employees who still in 2021 do not feel welcomed or safe working for the City of Edmonton or living in the City of Edmonton. Today, however, we have been given an opportunity to make a commitment to the Indigenous staff and the Indigenous community with the launch of the framework. We must listen. We must hear Indigenous people, and we have to respect their unique experiences so we can learn to work together towards a beautiful future for all. Today, the Indigenous framework gives us that opportunity to make this commitment. All of us need to commit to this. Now is the time. Will we make mistakes? Yes, we will. However, the best thing about making mistakes is the learning that comes from the mistakes. Trust me, I have made my share of mistakes. As you have heard, it has taken us years to get where we are today with the Indigenous framework. This has been a long journey. The Indigenous framework sets the expectations for all City of Edmonton employees as they enter into a relationship with the Indigenous community. This is a priority. We can create a path together for tomorrow. The path forward will need to include working collaboratively and respectfully with the Indigenous people, both internally at the city and externally in the community. The Indigenous community has been waiting for a long time to be included, recognized, respected, honored, and being given priority. The only way we can be successful is by involving all city staff, including the Indigenous community. This is an opportunity to take our internal experts on a journey with our Indigenous experts in the community. Together we can learn, listen, and work towards a future that is inclusive. Let me share a teaching with you that's been shared with me to keep me focused on tomorrow. My elder has always said, remember who you work for. Today you will have impacts for many generations to come. Always be mindful of who you are working for. The children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, and those yet to come. In this work, we will learn and listen. We will nurture and elevate those relationships that we have and work on creating new relationships. We will work together. We will listen and have conversations so that we can share the stories and celebrate success together. As department teams, we have spent a lot of time on this work and we understand the commitment we have entered into. We will all be held responsible for this work, and we need to understand our current realities and honor our commitments to the Indigenous community by being agile and flexible. We're all in this together. And as a corporation, we have just started on this journey. We're not done. We have a long way to go. A relationship takes time, patience, respect, and nurturing. And so too will this relationship. A future state that we can all work towards, the City of Edmonton as a partner to the Indigenous community and Indigenous businesses. A city that is inclusive to Indigenous people and an employer of choice for Indigenous people. Hi, thank you.
Hi, thank you. We'll now move on to Chrissy Hodgson. Oh, Emily Riddle. Let's not skip.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Riddle. I'm Nahio from the Alexander First Nation. I grew up in Edmonton in Ward 8, which will soon be called Ward Papasteo, and I come to you from Ward 6, soon to be Ward O'Damon, near the site where my ancestors adhered to Treaty 6, where the Alberta legislature now sounds. And I note this because it's appropriate this framework is about kinship, since we took on each other as family through this living agreement of treaty, and that should guide how we live together here. So I am here today as the Senior Advisor, Indigenous Relations for the Edmonton Public Library, with Chrissy Hodgins, who will speak next, who is the Director of Branch Services and Community Engagement. I have been on the steering committee for the Indigenous Framework since August 2019, and have immensely enjoyed working with a group of dedicated Indigenous and non-Indigenous people who are all passionate about making the city a more equitable place and are open to learning more about history from our perspective and ceremonial practices. So the framework, since I have been involved, has been based in ceremony and centered on elders and youth, and you've heard from some of these elders today. Indigenous people are very used to navigating non-Indigenous organizations and processes, and honoring Wachiti Toby and Wakodoan requires us to think, work, and live in new ways, and to challenge systemic racism that Indigenous people continue to face on our own land. The Edmonton Public Library endorses the Indigenous framework and looks forward to working with the city and our staff to embody the 4 roles of listener, connector, advocate, and partner in recognition of the unique context of public libraries. I believe that EPL is already one of the best connectors in the city. So this work to ensure Indigenous people and Indigenous ways of knowing are appropriately honored in the city is ongoing. One of the 7 commitments in the framework speaks to ensuring Indigenous people feel welcome and safe in city spaces and buildings. In fall 2020, we opened a revitalized Stanley A. Milner Library with a pipe ceremony with elders Joanne and Jerry Saddleback, and received a name for a public ceremony space called Peasu Waskaigan. This ongoing work to ensure that urban Indigenous people have access to ceremony and that libraries honor Indigenous knowledges is ongoing. Another one of the commitments in the framework is to host and participate in events where where Edmonton staff, representatives, and Indigenous peoples can build relationships and celebrate together, something that we desperately miss right now. The library has been hosting Indigenous and reconciliation-focused events for many years, and they are some of our best attended programs, even when they have been moved online since the pandemic. Ultimately, the library is a gathering place for ideas and people, which honors Amisquachi's origins as a place of trade and gathering. I look forward to seeing how EPL and the city can move together with this initiative and to a time when we can gather again in person. Ai hai exi pitama, which is the Nehio way to sort of say thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you very much. And to continue with representatives from the Edmonton Public Library, we'll go to Chrissy Hodgins.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Good morning. I am Chrissy Hodgins, Director of Branch Services and Community Engagement at Edmonton Public Library, and I'm here to speak on the behalf of EPL and our CEO, Pilar Martinez. As you have heard from my colleague, Emily Riddle, EPL endorses the City of Edmonton Indigenous Framework. Emily and I, as well as a number of our predecessors, have worked with the City's Steering Committee for more than 5 years, and we are proud to support Wahiji Jacoby as we work towards stewarding the plan into action. EPL remains committed to reconciliation and to supporting Indigenous communities. Our community-led service philosophy is about building relationships and identifying and meeting evolving community needs with a focus on reducing barriers to accessing library services. I cannot see a more powerful way for EPL to embody our community-led service philosophy than by adapting the Indigenous framework to our engagement practices. For EPL, this journey has been ongoing. In 2007, we were the first library in Canada to hire an Indigenous services librarian. Through the Voices of Amisquachi, our digital storytelling initiative, we steward stories from surrounding Indigenous communities. We bring library services to our neighbors at Enoch Cree Nation. We offer weekly virtual Cree language classes to the public with our partners at the Canadian Native Friendship Centre. Peasu Waskaigan, our Indigenous gathering space, opened its doors to the public in September 2020. The Milner Library is also home to beautiful art created by a variety of Indigenous artists. And then most recently, Nakum Joanne Saddleback joined us as our second elder in residence. While we have more work to do, we are grateful to the Indigenous elders and communities for their feedback, guidance, and support. I am proud and excited as we are committing to and adapting the Indigenous framework and the action plan for EPL. This is an important and significant undertaking that I believe will have a lasting and meaningful impact for the communities we serve, our local partners, customers, board, and staff. Wahiji Jacoby is a covenant for living together, and for me, I hope it serves as a reminder that we are stronger together. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you. Now we have Dawn Marie Marchand, former artist in residence for the City of Edmonton.
Hi, Mia Chipe Chipawea Squirrel. My name is Blue Horse Spirit Woman. I was asked to do an art piece for the framework that encapsulated what was said during the advocacy part of their engagement sessions. I chose to write or to come in and speak today because in reviewing the document itself, the framework, obviously the artwork is gorgeous. All four artists have really put a strong effort forward, and it's a beautiful document. But I wanted to speak to some of the things that the artwork says that are not in the framework. So I'm going to speak only about my particular piece, which is the advocacy piece, and how it's broken down a little bit, hoping to encourage all the counselors to follow the links and actually work with and absorb the information that these artists are trying to put forth. So for advocacy, what I found was that there were four main themes in all of the things that were being spoken. They came down to financial support, staff and training, an ombudsman or an advocacy office, and culturally safe spaces. So when you look at my painting, what kept coming across was that financially, there's a lot of startup funding, but not a lot of sustained funding to go the course. So when you look at the symbolism in around the funding, you see that the horse, which would be the startup funding, is covered instead of being front and forward. And that would be because sometimes the funding is not sustained. So you have just enough to start, but then it's not sustained, and we lose really important programs and services. The second is that sometimes the funding bureaucracy becomes the barrier itself. And that's why the horse is covered. Because traditionally the horse was a sense of currency for this particular territory. The other thing you'll notice, and you'll see it throughout the entire document, is the horseshoes, the V's and the U's. And I'm stealing that from the ledger drawings of the Indian Wars down south. After these ledger drawings started coming out, there was people were analyzing them, and they realized that the V-shaped horse hooves meant the indigenous horses, and the U-shaped hooves were the cavalry horses because they were shod. So when you see the pattern of the hoofs going through the entire document, basically what it's saying is that you need to follow the community in the direction that it needs to go. And sometimes what looks like following the community is actually just accessing privilege. So a lot of times, due to systemic imbalances, what looks like we're moving backwards is actually us just catching up to where everybody else is so that we can move forward. The funding also, because it affects all four of the frames, it affects all four of the major themes. That's why those hoof prints run through the whole bottom of the entire painting. We also want to talk about that whole idea of of training and staff. And it's already been reiterated here, but I'll say it again, that there be an inclusion of elders, women, and youth perspectives when you're developing policy, that you develop consensus building, that there is a recognition of Indigenous history and natural law, and there's a reliance on protocol when you're dealing with Indigenous peoples. There's also a mention of the personal work. The three areas that need to be recognized as your personal work are the personal bias and prejudice against Indigenous people you may hold, the personal and generational privilege, and how colonial history and minimizes the intergenerational and structural violence. So that's your personal work as City of Edmonton staff, and that we hope this framework brings forward.
Hi. Thank you very much, Dawn Marie. We really appreciate it. And is there a way we can access a write-up of?
Yes, I've provided a roadmap to my painting, and there are other artists who have provided work and descriptions about their artwork, and they're linked on the document online.
Perfect. Thank you, and we'll look into that. And it's a very good illustration of why our art is important. We'll now move on to Kyra Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Good morning and greetings, Miyogisigaw, to each and every one of you. My name is Kyra Lee Brown, Egwanitisikisun Kiwitan Achak, which is my North Star spirit name. My bloodline is Nihil, Cree, and Portuguese, and I'm a Misquachie, Waskagan born, and I'm honored to be here to speak today to the meaningful work of the City of Edmonton Indigenous Relations Framework. I am in the position of the Indigenous Relations Advisor with the Edmonton Arts Council, and in our efforts to support the Indigenous arts community, I have been on the Indigenous Relations Office Framework Committee for the past year and a half. This work has required many circle voices that aim to build a strong relationship through long-term commitments and actions. Alongside the City, EAC is prepared to support this work through its own commitments and actions. This is an ongoing process that has found success embedded in the deeper conversations and learning from the work and wisdom of past conversations. Our EAC family believes in the formula of listening, collaborating, and taking responsibility to participate in the dialogues where we together seek to find best pathways to reconciliation, where we are figuring out community strengths and seeking ways to acknowledge what is challenging so that we can work together to be, act, and do the work that heals and celebrates thriving, contented families and communities. The Edmonton Arts Council has a 10-year plan, Connections and Exchanges, where we are committed to understanding and supporting the needs of Indigenous arts and cultural communities. Through the opportunities to partner with the City and other agencies, we continue to create ways to support and align with the roles of listener, connector, advocate, and partner. They are intrinsic to the work that believes in meeting the needs of the arts community through long-term collaborative efforts. Our team works to hear what is truly happening in our arts and cultural communities, then creates responsive strategies that support the ongoing work within the community. EAC strives to be a connector with the City in these solid framework efforts through its past and ongoing agreements with fellow organizations, the Edmonton Heritage Council, and the Edmonton Arts Hub. My experience with building the Indigenous framework is a reflective process. I've had to think of my own family historical experience living in our Edmonton space, about the blessings and the struggles. This framework speaks to my heart about true reconciliation. There needs to be an effort together so that we can figure out the best ways to thrive and support our well-being and the opportunities for future generations to come. I do feel a great sense of responsibility to help our communities heal, to help our communities to be who they want to be, to help our communities reclaim their sense of worth and sense of family connection and culture, to help our youth grow to feel excited about their home and place that they live in, and to help our seniors and elders feel peace and safety. I have observed the circle of incredible people sitting at the table work through difficult discussions, on how we can create a framework that reflects the meaningful idea of connections that matter. I believe we have achieved relationships that honor each other and that this is good energy, and it will be reflected in the actions and strategies going forward. This relationship work is not new. It is built on the work of many people before and will continue with generations to come. So I feel honored in contributing to building the pathways that support reconciliation, that support a united direction and commitment to uplifting our First Nations people so that they can choose to thrive and participate in what our city looks like. EAC believes that Indigenous peoples have agency in their journeys of revitalizing and participating in traditional, contemporary, and future manifestations of our culture. This is reflected in the Innu Riverlot 11 Park project, where over the course of more than 6 years, many artists, knowledge keepers, professionals, and community members helped bring a park to life. A park that proudly reflects the culture, traditions, and history. Art pieces placed in perpetuity for our community to build memories that meaningfully connect us. To sum up my experience, it is an honor and a privilege to work with the city and partner circles of dedicated people, and an honor and a privilege to stand side by side with my own work family, the Edmonton Arts Council, who work with passion to support the discovery and realization of what support for the Indigenous arts community looks like. Hi, all my relations. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. And next, I'm not sure if it's Levy or Levy, but I'm pretty sure the first name is Andrea from Edmonton Police Service.
Hi, yes. My name is Andrea Levy, and I'm a Anishinaabe and a member of Washak Onagum in Treaty 3 territory. And I'm here today as the Indigenous Equity Advisor at the Edmonton Police Service. I've been here in Edmonton for 14 years, and I thank the signatories and descendants of Treaty 6 territory for welcoming me on this land, where I've built my career, started my family, and reclaimed my identity. Chimigwich to Elders Jerry and Joanne Saddleback, Tom Snow, and Heather Porters, who have spoken such truth today, and for the guidance and strength of Donalana Whiskey Jack throughout this work. I've been with the internal working group since the fall of 2018, and I am honored and inspired by the intention and dedication of the city employee allies that have continuously shown up in this space to learn and grow. And for my fellow Indigenous City of Edmonton employees for being vulnerable in this space of growth, providing their strength and experience to help others learn. Challenging racism within a colonial world is a work of resistance and strength, and I honor their commitment to this. This framework is built on a foundation based in ceremony, passion, and relationality that is necessary for the actions moving forward to be done in a good way. This work is all about relationships and the truth that comes with that responsibility. Advocating for Indigenous equity within systems has been at the center of my being since I was young. Seeing the struggles that my mom and her siblings faced with the various systems, in addition to the impacts of my grandmother surviving residential schools on our family, I've always wanted to challenge our social and political systems to see the value of our Indigenous ways of being and knowing. For me, this has been a personal and professional journey of reclamation of what colonial institutions has taken from my family and community, and I believe a new future built together is possible. However, this is only one side of it. We need the support and courage of our leaders to take up the institutional will and create action from our work. This is why it is vitally important for municipal bodies such as the City of Edmonton and Edmonton Police Service to be the leaders in advocating for the equity of Indigenous peoples within our systems, as these are central pillars in our systemic structures that have been built on assumptions that have limited understandings and produced negative experiences of and for Indigenous peoples interacting with these systems. It is up to us as leaders to work and advocate for our own truths in these instances, as well as larger societal reconciliation. In recognition of the complex relationships that policing institutions and Indigenous peoples have and the complex road going forward, the Edmonton Police Service at this time is not adopting the City of Edmonton Indigenous Framework, as we need to first address our complex issues and barriers specific to policing first. Although we are not adopting it at this time, we are in alignment with the spirit and intent of the framework, and we will be continuously working with our municipal partners to better support Indigenous peoples within Edmonton, and we'll be working towards developing our strategic path forward that addresses our unique relationship with Indigenous peoples and creates substantial systemic change in collaboration and unity with community partners. Part of this work begins with the development of the Nisikamakwan Council and the community's aid in implementation of the systemic recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls in Two-Spirit Communities, Broken Trust Report, and the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples. Our intention with this work is to address the concerns and solutions that have come from generations of consultations, providing a foundation of providing a foundation of relationships that work to address the systemic barriers and challenges experienced by Indigenous people. It is through this work, hand in hand with representatives of the Indigenous community here in Edmonton, that we hope we can effect real change within our systems. The framework that you see before you has been built on a foundation of relationships, growth, learning, and ceremony. The work that the employees, youth, community, and elders has done is an amazing first step to creating change for our city. We have spent many years together envisioning the path forward with courage and compassion. It is at this point, with this foundation, that the leaders in our collective systems need to find that same courage and compassion in order to take it from intention to action. I think it is beautiful that it is our Indigenous ways of knowing and being that have brought us all here together across agencies, organizations, and community to build a better future for our next generations. Miigwech, for the youth and our elders who are involved in this work, it is you who have provided the backbone of our collective understanding. And my hope is that our leaders in the city will be impassioned by this intention and provide the resources and space to make this framework actionable and impactful. Miigwech.
Miigwech. Hi. We'll now move to Matthew Wood.
Oh, wow. Thank you. My name is Matthew Wood, Nasigasun. I'm here today as a 2021 Indigenous Artist in Residence. Very grateful to be here and to be supported by an amazing committee, a program that I believe is very vital to our communities, and programs and opportunities like this allows, for artists such as myself and many within Treaty 6 and all across Turtle Island. I mean, it gives us a chance to reconnect with our culture, our identity. Art isn't everything. Art is something that's been instilled into our genetics, into our DNA as Indigenous people. It's in our culture. It's in our language. It's in our, our syllabics. It's in our dance. It's in our beadwork. It's in sewing, and these are all things that have layers and teachings within them, within the arts, that allow us to teach us how to care for one another, to have that empathy, to teach us to treat others how we want to be treated. And for me, it's really important for someone being disconnected from my community and then finally being reconnected through the arts and being supported and uplifted through programs such as the Indigenous Artists in Residence. Earlier there was words of youth being fearful to be in these positions, and even me today, I still, as much as I'm supported through the community, I sometimes overthink and think that I don't belong in these spaces, but it's become more evident and a responsibility and a duty that I feel as an artist myself is to express these things and to encourage more support within the arts and programs and culture, which, with more support and the importance of these programs, it strengthens our relationships with the first peoples of our culture, Indigenous peoples right here in Treaty 6 and all around, through Turtle Island. And it gives us a way to honor a lot of the things that we speak of, with the Truth and Reconciliation, the framework of what we speak of today. And it's, there's many counselors, and we have even our mayor that's has attended things such as the Cypher Wild, which I'm one of the founding member of Cypher Wild, which is a a block party event, which brings community together. It brings people together of all walks of life. And it's become more evident as well, too, is that there's the need of this because a place of belonging, a place of where people could be themselves, where people could share their story. Everybody has a story to share. And we all know how, we all have a different approach to how to share our story, whether it be through music, whether it be through dance, whether it be through our languages, even food, I think these are beautiful things. And I just really truly believe that with more programs and opportunities like this, that we won't have, idle hands out there with our youth. And without programs, for me, my options were either to be in a native gang, go to jail, become a drug dealer, be in a negative space and putting a lot more hurt than healing out into this world. So it's a two-way street, and I think we're not here to fix people. We're here to heal together, and the arts allows that. It allows us to heal as a community, as a whole, and if you have attended a Cypher Wild while leaving City Hall or just walking by in Churchill Square, you've seen the energy that it holds. You see the activation it brings, not just for Indigenous youth, but all walks of life, even our elders, our adults, people from the inner city. These are all people that are our parents or brothers or sisters, aunties and uncles, human beings. So, we think, as mentioned before earlier, the mistreatment and the situation that happened earlier, these things need to be, I'm starting to lose my train of thought, but these things are with programs like what we have out there and providing a space for people to have their voice, I think, we're able to strengthen those relationships and really put forward, this framework and more than just putting a little patch on it, a little Band-Aid. It allows us to really, really move forward. And I thank you for having me here. And hi.
Hey. Thank you. And I relate to your words. Look forward to see what you create this year. And of course, we added one more speaker, and that was Ron Walker.
Good morning. Tensei, Ron Walker Nasikasun Treaty 8 Ochinia. I'm a direct descendant of the Treaty 8 signers. Good morning to our cultural knowledge keepers and my relatives in attendance today. Thank you to the city councilors for hearing my message as well as the hardworking staff at the Indigenous Relations Office, led by Jamie Miller, and other organizations that we continue to have successful engagements with. I also want to thank the Honorable Mayor Iverson personally. Since he has been in leadership, interactions, dialogues, and actions between both the city and the Indigenous people have improved. That comes from having an open mind and being knowledgeable about the history of the land. As an Indigenous person who is called Amiskahiga his home, I thank the people of this land for letting me be part of the leadership in the community throughout my years of cultural, educational, community development, and artistic endeavors, as well as the ancestors of this land that I have prayed and gave thanks to. One of the largest endeavors we have accomplished together is the development of one of the largest Indigenous festivals in Western Canada. Together, the Indigenous Relations Office, both school systems, local organizations, and as a director of the Canadian Native Friendship Center, we have developed a festival that can compete with any other festival across Canada. In 2017, we set an unofficial world record for the largest round dance at the Edmonton Indigenous Peoples Festival. When the Aboriginal Peoples Television Network showed the aerial footage of various communities across Canada on Indigenous Day, June 21st, Edmonton had thousands and thousands of participants. As the group and I have said, on that day, Edmonton won. No one could come close to us and our numbers. This is an example of the success and of Indigenous solidarity and prosperity. With this success, in today's climate, the Indigenous Relations Office, with guidance from the city and various other Indigenous organizations, can continue to have successes that benefit not only Indigenous people, but assist to improve the economic, cultural, and community fabric of our home. That is what the creation of this document, of this living document, I would like to think about when it comes in terms of the framework. Many times I have been on many council or committees and discussions across Edmonton, not only for the festival and arts, but also for COVID, education, and cultural presentations as well. And also multi-ethnic invitations. I personally welcomed the Syrians in 2017 at a Black festival called 5 Artists, 1 Love, curated by my friend Darren Jordan. And when I did that, it came to my realization that is what should be occurring at the airports, is Indigenous people welcoming the people from different countries to this land, because this is our land. And I'm grateful to the city, especially, as I said, Honorable Mayor Iveson for understanding that, because in the past, and I've lived here in Edmonton for a long time, in the past that has not occurred. So once again, I want to say thank you. Thank you for listening to me, and hi.